Thanks for that, John. Now, I guess the idea for the rest of the evening is if anybody has a question on anything that John has said, or if you have a question on something that's bothering you, anything at all, we're going to open to the floor for questions now. So.
Do you believe the Liberal Democrats are dead at the next election?
No. I think, well, the coalition deficit, the coalition government deficit reduction programme must work. If it doesn't work, we will struggle, because I think we will get the blame, there is a danger that if things go pear-shaped, that yes, we will face a very tough election next time round. I think if the coalition is a success, I think we will do very well against the Conservatives, because I think quite a lot of people quite like people who are inclined between us and the Conservatives quite like the idea of having a moderating Liberal Democrat influence on the Tories. But where we're fighting Labour, like in my seat, I think the message will be far harder to get across, because at the last election, Labour's campaign was vote Lib Dem, get the Tories, and I rather suspect that will be their message next time. And it will be difficult. It will be more difficult to argue against that message, given that after the election we did end up in coalition with the Tories. To be honest, I didn't expect us to end up in coalition with the Tories. My gut instinct was that the Tories would get an overall majority, but only a small overall majority. That would have been so much easier for us. But the tough decision to go into coalition was made. We've now got to live with that. We've got to make it work. We've got to make it a success. If the coalition government is a success and the economy picks up, it's certainly going to be very tough over the next 12 months. But if the economy then picks up and we've got significant growth, I think we could actually do significantly better at the next election. But I think that would be at the expense of the Tories rather than the expense of Labour.
So you don't think we're dead?
I don't think we're dead, no.
Okay. Right. Callum.
As you can probably tell from my accent, I'm just a visitor. So how do you think that what's going on in Westminster at the moment, given that a lot of the stuff that we've got in the coalition agreement hasn't actually happened yet, and a lot of things like the Brown Report coming out has happened, how do you think we're going to fare next May in Scotland and Wales and in London and local councils?
Well, I know my colleagues in Scotland.
Don't lose my question.
My colleagues in Scotland are pretty nervous about the elections. The Tories are a fairly toxic brand in Scotland, and I think the local elections next year will be tough. But if you look at the by-election results since the election, we've actually done not too badly. We've done very well against the Conservatives, and we have more or less held our own against Labour. I think we've got to get ourselves out of the sort of mindset of having been in opposition, and we've got to be a bit careful not to just be saying sorry all the time about tough decisions that are being made by the coalition government, and actually go out and talk about the positives that have come out as well. I mean, there have been several things, including an extra £2 billion in child tax credits for low earners. That's just been completely lost within all the stuff about taking child benefit away from a family that's got a high tax bracket earner. And I think we've got to try and get the message across of the positive things that we've done and are doing and will be doing over the next few months. I do agree to a certain extent that a lot of the stuff that we don't want to see seems to have happened fairly early on, and then some of the stuff that's going to be coming out in the future, the goodies are coming later. I suppose you could argue the goodies are going to be closer to the election, which is a good thing. But yeah, certainly I think one of the key issues is about what we come forward with in terms of the green stuff. And making us the greenest government, because that is an ambitious aim. It's an achievable aim, but I think Chris Huhne has got a big job on his hands to persuade some of the dinosaurs in the Tory party that these things have got to happen.
Question over there.
Ed Miliband said this morning that he'd be willing to reach out to Lib Dems that are really against a lot of these education cuts, maybe MPs such as yourself. He's also said some very harsh things about the Liberal Democrat Party in the leadership contest. I was wondering how comfortable you would be with working with the new leader of Labour on things like education, for example.
Well, I suppose first of all, Labour have got a bit of a cheek over, and you know, I won't take any lessons from Labour over anything to do with education. They were the ones that introduced tuition fees in the first place after promising that they wouldn't do, and they did. You know, so I'll have none of this breaking promises stuff. They were the ones that introduced tuition fees. They were the ones that introduced the Brown Review, and they made the Brown Review report back after the election because they didn't want to make that unpopular decision before. But they were going to increase tuition fees. They will, of course, oppose any increase in tuition fees now because they oppose absolutely everything and have no alternative in place. Ed Miliband apparently is in favour of a graduate tax. His shadow chancellor is completely opposed to a graduate tax. They have no policy whatsoever. So we will have to wait and see what they come up with on education. But as far as I'm concerned, you know, I'm quite happy for Ed Miliband to say tough things about me, and I'm quite happy to say tough things about Ed Miliband. If after the next election there is the prospect of an agreement between the Liberal Democrats and the Labour Party, rather than an agreement between the Liberal Democrats and the Conservative Party or any other combination of parties, that's fine. You go into an election fighting your corner for your party, trying to get as many Liberal Democrats or Labour or Tory, whichever party you are, elected to Parliament. Once the election's out of the way, if you don't get an overall majority, you have to work with other parties. Simple as that.
There's a question over here.
Oh, thank you. You talked about the academies earlier, and I was just wondering why, when it was in debate in the House of Commons, there was like, because you seem like you're quite against them, as I am, and the lack of curriculum in them, but no one was really seeming to be debating about them, like to get like additions to the bill, whereas the only person that I know who's getting wanting to get an addition to the bill about basically there's no curriculum to them was Caroline Lucas, the Green MP, and I was just like, I don't understand, was it just that you weren't able to because of the coalition?
Well, there was quite, because I was in a bit of the discussion about the academies bill, and I suppose I'm being accused of being a bit of a serial rebel now, because I've rebelled more times in this Parliament, well, probably twice as many times in this Parliament than I did in 5 years in the previous Parliament. And I actually voted for an amendment by John Pugh to do with consultation with parents. I didn't actually vote against the Academies Bill, and I'll tell you why I didn't vote against the Academies Bill, because you've got to pick your fights. One of those fights for me is tuition fees, another fight will be a replacement for Trident, another fight will be nuclear energy. But as far as the Academies Bill was concerned, I actually think we got a lot of concessions in the House of Lords and behind the scenes, which weren't originally in the bill. And actually, in the end, I think the Academies Bill was watered down so much that actually it seems completely pointless to go for an academy. If you are a successful school within the local authority system, there doesn't seem to be a great deal of point now trying to have academy status. In the past, with loads and loads of extra cash and a lot more sort of a lot more time to do the sorts of things that you want to do yourself rather than being controlled within a certain environment. I can understand why people thought academies, if they supported academies, I could understand why they wanted to go down that road. But with the new ones, I think the legislation was watered down so much that they've just become pointless. And I just don't get the idea of free schools. It just seems a completely barking proposal.
Okay, more questions?